Hello, this is Carmen Edwards. This is my presentation on Juveniles and Corrections for CRJ 250 Juvenile Justice, Thomas University, Lori Battle, the instructor. Alright, why do we need a juvenile correctional system? According to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, the totals for the United States in 2010, there were 225 juvenile offenders in custody for every 100,000 juveniles in the U.S. population. That was about 71,000 in custody. On top of that, there was almost 1.4 million cases handled by the juvenile court systems for the same year. Let's talk a little bit closer to home here in Georgia. In 2011, Georgia had almost 5,700 in custody and over 40,000 under some type of juvenile justice care. These numbers are decreased from previous years, but it is still evident that we will need to continue to utilize a juvenile corrections program and constantly seek improvement and change for our juveniles. Now we're going to talk about types of correctional treatment of juveniles. There are two major categories for correctional treatments available for juveniles. We have community treatment and we have institutional treatment. Community treatment is an effort to provide care, protection, and treatment for juveniles in need through the use of non-secure and non-institutional residences, counseling services, victim restitution programs, and other community services to treat juveniles in their own communities. Some of these community treatments could include probation, foster homes, group homes, or boarding schools in the community. Community treatment is based on the idea that the juvenile offender is not a danger to the community and has a better chance of being rehabilitated in the community. Then we have institutional treatment facilities. These are correctional centers operated by federal, state, and county governments. They restrict the movement of residents through monitoring, locked exits, and fence controls. There are different types of facilities for juvenile offenders, such as intake centers, drug treatment centers, training schools, and boot camps, just to name a few. According to the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, probation was ordered in 53% of the 920,000 delinquency cases that received a juvenile court sanction in 2010, compared with 12% that received placement in an out-of-home facility. Probation and other forms of community treatment generally refer to non-punitive legal dispositions for delinquent youth, emphasizing treatment without incarceration. Juvenile probation has been coined the workhorse of the juvenile justice system. Probation is the oldest and most widely used community-based corrections program. Probation is used both for first-time and low-risk offenders, or it can be used as an alternative to institutional confinement for more serious offenders. During a period of probation supervision, a juvenile offender remains in the community and continue normal activities such as school and work. However, the juvenile must comply with certain conditions established by the court. These conditions can include regular meetings with a probation officer. A juvenile may also be required to adhere to a curfew, complete a specific period of community service, or pay restitution. A probation order may also include additional requirements such as specific counseling programs. Probation can be revoked if the juvenile violates the probation conditions. If probation is revoked, the court may reconsider its disposition and impose stricter sanctions. Again, from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, we have some statistics on what offenders are receiving probation for. The four most serious offenses from 2008 to 2010, as shown, are personal, property, drugs, and public order. Property offenses constitute the largest share of formal probation caseloads. All right, Probation Plus. The emphasis of community corrections has traditionally been on rehabilitation, but since the 80s there has been a move towards a social control aspect as well. While not abandoning rehabilitation, new programs have been developed that add a control dimension to community corrections. Some of these alternative sanctions include intensive supervision, almost daily supervision by a probation officer, have to adhere to similar conditions as regular probation. This would be to treat offenders who would have normally have been sent to a secure treatment facility as part of a very small probation caseload that receives almost daily scrutiny. House arrest. The offender remains at home during specific periods. Often there is monitoring through random phone calls, visits, or electronic devices. This allows the offender to remain in the community on conditions that they continue work or school. Restorative justice. There are restrictions may be prescribed by the community members to help repair harm done to the victim. This would attempt to address the issues that produce conflict between two parties. Restoration rather than retribution or punishment is the heart of the restoration justice approach. Balanced probation. Restrictions tailored to the risk of the offender presence to the community. The system integrates community protections, the accountability of the offender, and individualized attention to the offender. A program is tailored to the offender, and the goal is for that offender to accept responsibility for his or her actions. Restitution. This could be monetary, victim service, or community service restitution. Restitution can take several forms. A juvenile can reimburse the victim of the crime or donate money to a charity or public cause. The juvenile may also be required to provide some service directly to the victim or to assist a community organization. And residential programs. Offenders are placed in residential, non-secure facilities such as groups home or foster home. They have to adhere to conditions and close monitoring. This is where juveniles can be closely monitored as well as develop close relationship with staff members. Alright, here we're going to look at juvenile institutions of the past. In the late 18th and early 19th century, courts punished and confined youths in jails and penitentiaries. Since few other options existed, youths of all ages and genders were often indiscriminately confined with hardened adult criminals and the mentally ill in large, overcrowded, and decrepit penal institutions. Many of these youth were confined for non-criminal behavior simply because there were no other option. At the same time, American cities were confronted high rates of child poverty and neglect, putting pressure on city leaders to fashion a solution to this emerging social issue. In response, pioneering penal reforms Thomas Eddy and John Griscom organized the Society for the Prevention of Pauperism to oppose housing youth in adult jails and prisons and urge the creation of a new type of institution. This led to the House of Refuge. Their work established the New York House of Refuge in 1825. This was the first institution designed to house poor, destitute, and vagrant youth who were deemed by authorities to be on the path towards delinquency. The House of Refuge was large, fortress-like, congregate-style institutions located in urban areas for youth designated as abandoned, delinquent, or incorrigible. The average number of youth in a House of Refuge was 200, but some, like the New York House of Refuge, housed over 1,000. Over time, the New York House of Refuge became the first movement in what was later to become the juvenile justice system. Within 3 years of the opening, similar institutions were opened in Boston and Philadelphia. By the 1840s, approximately 25 more facilities were constructed throughout the country. The House of Refuge quickly confronted the same issues that plagued adult jails and prisons: overcrowding, deteriorating conditions, and staff abuse. In addition, with the emerging public schools movement and compulsory education, social reformers began arguing for a new type of institution and placed greater emphasis on education. This brought about reform, training, and industrial schools. Through this movement, the reform school, also called training and industrial schools, became an indelible part of America's juvenile justice system. The system housed a large number of youth in highly regimented penitentiary-like institutions. The best examples of a 19th century reform school was the San Francisco Industrial School, which was established in 1859. Throughout its turbulent 30-year history, the industrial school was a subject of frequent scandals stemming from physical abuse to managerial incompetence. When the facility was finally ordered closed in 1891, the city's judiciary denounced it as a failed system. I've included here a video featuring Daniel McKellar. Go ahead and take time to watch this and learn a little bit more about the history of the industrial school.
Like other reform institutions of the time, San Francisco Industrial School followed this congregate care model of housing youth as a primary way of dealing with youth who were deemed unfit by society. Consequently, most of the youth who were committed to the institution were held for living a life of idleness and vagrancy instead of committing an actual crime.
In the early 19th century, the first youth institutions outside of orphanages were called houses of refuge. The first house of refuge was established in 1825 in England, and its primary focus was taking abused, neglected, uh, mildly delinquent, uh, vagrant kids off the street. And it represented a vast expansion of the role and responsibility of government or government entities or its designated agents in the care and treatment of children. And look at a seminal event in the development of youth institutions in the 19th century in the United States. It's the creation of the House of Refuge. So that model became the model for all subsequent institutions for the rest of the century. To some degree, right up until now, because our youth correctional institutions in most states currently still follow congregate institutional design as to our adult prisons.
Given the stark similarities between industrial schools and the adult prison system, industrial schools quickly made attempts to resemble public schools rather than jails. Thus, industrial institutions presented themselves to the public as schools with the focus of educating and reforming youth. Like our current juvenile justice system, industrial schools during the 19th century invoked the legal doctrine of parens patriae, a doctrine that limited constitutional due process rights to children. This doctrine gave the state the right to determine what was in the best interest of the child, often overruling the rights of parents.
The legal justification for removing children from the streets and placing them in institutions was really amounting to a deprivation of liberty, because the kids, once they were placed in a house of refuge were free to go, whether you committed a crime or not. Remember, most of them did not commit a crime, but it was under the guise of the state was protecting them. And it wasn't about, the state wasn't imprisoning them, they were protecting them, therefore it was justified under the legal interpretation of the day.
And so, another job for the police and the court. Johnny Marvin is now in the hands of the law. This is the first time he's been caught, but his delinquent tendencies began long before the conflict of an unhappy home and in the hangout of the gang which was his refuge. Now, what will become of this boy? What road lies ahead for this sullen, misguided 15-year-old? Will he be placed in a cell for the night, herded with drunks and criminals, then in the morning paraded in the police lineup? Will he be fingerprinted, photographed, given a permanent criminal record at 15? Will he be sentenced by a judge who knows nothing of the background of Johnny and his family or the reasons behind his behavior? Will he grow up in reformatories and prisons to become a bitter and seasoned criminal? Johnny and 200,000 other youngsters who are arrested each year are America's #1 crime problem. Can't something be done to help these twisted young lives and set them straight?
And it was really the basis for child advocates today to call for greater societal responsibility for these children, or otherwise thrown. And certainly it was certainly well founded. The problem with it is it also created a lot of injustice. The reality within the institutions, as we know, was often much different than what was pronounced public. And typically, the typical institution of the mid-19th century was underfunded, and even though many of them said that they were to emphasize education, very often had very limited capacity.
Throughout the course of its history, the industrial school underwent a series of scandals that still exist in youth correctional institutions today. Instances of staff brutality and victimization were commonplace, as was the abuse of girls and young detainees. Acts of brutality and financial embezzlement soon led to public investigations and social protests. By the end of the 19th century, it was clear the industrial school was failing in its mission of reforming and educating. While there were several court cases that challenged the constitutionality of the industrial school, most were defeated on the legal basis of parents' feedback. This law justified these institutions as places of reform rather than places of punishment. In 1892, the industrial school was ordered to close.
The reality is the situation in the industrial school never changed during its 30-year history. It was a turbulent period. When it finally closed down in 1830, the headline in the San Francisco newspaper was "Closed down at last. Industrial school passes into history, long denounced by the city's judiciary as a school of crime." And so when it finally did pass into history, the consensus was good. The city officials took the attitude that good riddance and the consensus was that the industrial school had been an utter failure. Ironically, what the state did is they turned around and established two state-run reform schools along a similar model. So we've been rid of the state school ever since.
Although reform schools have received a substantial amount of criticism by child advocates, social justice educators, and policymakers, they have remained the fundamental model for detaining youth for almost 2 centuries now. While the San Francisco Industrial School laid the components of California's juvenile justice system, it was never successful in accomplishing its primary goal of reforming youth.
I often get asked the question, why do we still have to offer training schools? Why do we still need to follow a model that we established in the 19th century and frankly was discredited to the most part in the 19th century? I think much of it, some of the critiques of the institutions back then. I think the answer lies in human behavior and maybe the study of organizational behavior. Once these institutions were created, they took on a life of their own. It's like anything else, whether it's a school, whether it's a dog factory, whatever. People's livelihoods become dependent on it. You establish the foundation, and that foundation stays. It plants itself. And over time, it's self-perpetuating. Because what happens is people come in, it becomes an important source of livelihood. With just that alone is a primary factor in explaining why these things go on and on. Their jobs. But along with that, you also have they also take on a life of their own because over time, certain routines set in, become commonplace, practices become commonplace, training materials, policies, they're all built around sustaining that institutional structure. And what it ends up doing is it ensures that institutional structure continues on into the next generation after generation.
The idea that youth institutions operate like schools and not jails has justified the existence of youth correctional facilities since their inception as houses of refuge during the early 1800s. While California's state correctional system continues to follow this historical pattern, child advocates have placed it under scrutiny for violating basic human rights. Like the San Francisco Industrial School, today's correctional system has failed in meeting its mission of providing youth with educational and civic services.
current juvenile institutions. We have public institutions. Most juveniles are housed in public institutions that are administered by state agencies. They include, or the agencies included that administer these are Child and Youth Services, Health and Social Services, Corrections, or Child Welfare. Some states have centralized systems that cover adults and juveniles, but many states have removed juvenile corrections from the existing adult corrections. There's also private institutions. They're maintained and operated by private agencies that are funded or chartered by state authorities. Most private institutions are small facilities that hold fewer than 30 youth. Many have specific missions such as drug treatment or treatment for emotional problems. 80% of public institutions have been classified as secure, while only 20% of private institutions are high security facilities. While the physical conditions of secure facilities for juveniles has come a long way from the training schools of the turn of the 20th century, still some administrators realize that more modern facilities are necessary to comply with national standards for juvenile incarceration. Alright. Institutional treatment programs. Nearly all institutions have some form of treatment, the purpose being to rehabilitate youth to become well-adjusted individuals and send them back out into society to be productive citizens. Some treatment programs included are individual counseling. Counselors help juveniles understand and solve their current adjustment problems. There's also psychotherapy. This is a highly structured counseling in which a therapist helps a juvenile solve conflicts and makes a more positive adjustment to society. Reality therapy, a form of counseling that emphasizes current behavior and requires the individual to accept responsibility for all of his or her actions. We have behavior modification. It's a technique for shaping desired behaviors through a system of rewards and punishments. There's group therapy, counseling of several individuals together in group sessions. There's guided group interaction. This is through group interactions, a delinquent can acknowledge and solve personal problems with support from other group members. Positive peer culture. It's a counseling program in which peer leaders encourage other group members to modify their behavior, and peers help reinforce the acceptable behaviors. And Milo therapy. All aspects of the environment are part of the treatment, and meaningful change, increased growth, and satisfactory adjustment are encouraged. While there are good intentions behind these correctional treatments, there are also drawbacks. Some problems that hinder the success of these programs are lack of trained staff, lack of funds, and poor implementation of the programs. Other treatment programs we have in the facilities are education and vocation programs. These programs are essential to treatment. The focus of rehabilitating offenders and providing them with skills to be productive citizens cannot be completely successful if education is not included. It is an important part of social development, and it also has therapeutic qualities. The programs offered are academic school. Ideally, the offenders should be allowed to attend school programs that lead them to a high school diploma or a GED. Some facilities use computer-based programming, while others have educators on staff. There's also vocational schools. These give offenders a trade, give them something to do when they get back out, some knowledge on to be able to get a job. Today, vocational programs available include anywhere from auto repair, printing, woodworking, computer training, food service, cosmetology. The list goes on, and it varies by facility. Like the other treatment programs, education programs are also faced with challenges. Some of the same challenges of the other, but they also have additional challenges. Many youth that enter the facilities, they're mentally challenged, or they have learning disabilities. They're so far behind their grade level that it's hard to get them caught up. Many also come in just frustrated with education, or they just don't like school. Juvenile reentry and aftercare. Youth who are released from institutional confinement are more likely to succeed if they have access to services that can help them thrive in a non-institutional environment. One thing that is offered is reentry programs. This is often called pre-release planning. It involves preparation for releases from confinement. It is the process and experience of the transition of juveniles from a correctional setting back into society, school, families, just society in general. It prepares them for a life on the outside again. Then we have the aftercare programs. In the juvenile justice system, aftercare programs are the equivalent of parole for an adult. Once released from the institution, they may be placed in an aftercare program of some kind with the purpose of receiving support during the readjustment period following the release. Both of these programs together just help enable the offender to be successful when they release and reduce recidivism. The juvenile justice system has grown and changed since the 1800s. Today's juvenile system maintains rehabilitation as its primary goal and distinguishes itself from the criminal justice system in many important ways. With the steady change and growth of the juvenile justice system, juvenile crime has decreased over the past several years. The goal is for the system to continue on this path of growth and rehabilitation of our youthful offenders and continue to show a decline in youth crime rates.